Man, these last two chapters of Kaiju number 8 have been an amazing ride. We'll start with chapter 101, which is entirely composed of Reno's backstory. It's about time we got his backstory after literally 101 chapters. Sheesh, it took Matsumoto years to give us fans something on your boy. First of all, I'm gonna say this. I called it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Reno's hero worship of Kafka. Despite his tsundere tendencies and constant reprimanding of Kafka throughout the entire manga, he aggressively looks up to the man, Kafka Hibino. Not Kafka, the defense force officer with 1% release force, not Kaiju number 8 with a meteoric resilience level of 9.8, but Kafka Hibino, the simple Kaiju monster sweeper who placed his life on the line for someone he didn't even know, even knowing that he had almost zero chance of survival. That is the man that Reno looks up to. That is the man that Reno has decided for the first time in his life to call a true hero. I'm getting ahead of myself, but Reno's backstory really makes you want to give him a hug, man. Like, it's so sad. We get a look at how his childhood was back in the day, and honestly, it feels like Reno is the character that got the archetypal shonen protagonist backstory that is typically reserved for the main character, if you know what I mean. Reno's lore begins by giving us insight into his thoughts as he's battling the Daikaiju that are blocking Kafka from making his way to Mina Ashiro. It's the perfect snapshot of his train of thought back in chapter 1, so that we can now understand why he had that massive stick up his butt when he first met Kafka. His story begins with him saying to himself, "Heroes don't exist." So you already know this isn't fitting to be a lighthearted tale of a 10-year-old child fulfilling his dream to become the very best like no one ever was. We learn that both Reno's parents and older brother died when he was just a shrimp. Seriously, he looks like he's no more than 5 or 6 years old at the time of this flashback. I mean, look at him. Face all beat up, clothes all dirty, parents and siblings all dead. Matsumoto really gave my boy Reno the shonen protagonist starter package and sent him on out the door. I mean, his school, where he potentially made few friends in his miserable dumpster juice of an early life, got reduced to ashes. His grandmother, who took him in after he was orphaned, literally spent every night crying over the deaths of at least one of her children and grandson. And for Reno, this was a difficult life to experience where no one stepped in to help. This upbringing created his cynical worldview, and it persisted up until the day he met Kafka Hibino. And I called it. I knew that him getting rescued by Kafka would end up being more than just him being forever grateful to Kafka. No, Kafka is the source of Reno's hope. Kafka is the quintessential hero that Reno didn't believe existed and now aspires to be. It's about time we can understand who Reno is and his motivation. For being the secondary protagonist of the story, to not have his backstory at least hinted at in the earlier chapters was strange and unusual activity. We didn't really have a reason to get behind Reno as a character, other than the fact that he stood behind Kafka through thick and thin during crucial moments when it mattered most. It's only now that Reno is starting to become more of a fully fleshed, well, not fully fleshed, but more of a solid character. It is what it is. They say better late than never. So back to the present event at hand, Reno is able to fend off the Daikaiju long enough to give Kafka a chance to break through their ranks, all the while fulfilling his personal goal of fighting on equal ground with his hero, Kafka. All in all, this was a solid chapter for Kaiju number 8. I think it would have been a hard one to mess up because almost any backstory for Reno would have been fine. We just needed any backstory at all. That being said, this was written similar to Hoshina's backstory in the sense that it recontextualized every interaction and decision Reno made in the past. For example, Hoshina chose to let Kafka flunk the training exam, even though everyone was ready to fail him. It was framed as him wanting Kafka on the team for recreational purposes. Hoshina found him to be hilarious and felt the 3rd Division needed that type of humor to bring moments of levity to a group of people constantly risking their lives. However, as the manga goes on, Hoshina's real reason becomes pretty clear, and was outright stated in B-side. By the way, if you're not reading B-side, you should, it's pretty great. Hoshina simply couldn't bring himself to fail someone who reminded him of himself, someone who has the will to press on even when everyone is against him. You pretty much get the same effect here this chapter with Reno. In hindsight, it helps to explain why anything Reno desired to do was so heavily centered around Kafka, and he just met the dude. Now let's talk about chapter 102. This was a flex chapter for the side characters. I mean that literally too. This whole chapter was designed for Iharu, Haruichi, and Aoi to flex and essentially go ham on some Daikaiju. We already previously saw how Captain Ogata wanted to take Iharu under his wing. Now we get to see how far his training has taken him. Now that Reno has played his part, he reassures Iharu that he made sure to instill into both of them the skills necessary to take on such a strong kaiju. And I will admit I was confused by the manga's translation. It was worded a little bit odd, but essentially Ogata reminds Iharu that skill for him only comes into play once his release force is at its lowest. At that point, it will take skill to get results when your power level is lower than everyone else's. Think of Iharu like a Street Fighter 6 character. Homeboy always goes into burnout mode after using Drive Rush one time. Ogata's little pep talk culminates in a flashback because that's just how we do in this arc, so yeah. Here it's explained that Iharu is classified as what is known among the Defense Force as a Flash Adapter, and that Iharu is the third recorded Flash Adapter in history. Now I really want to know who came before Iharu. Was Ogata the second or someone else? You just know that plot thread is going to come back in the future. I can feel it. Flash adapters cannot maintain a stable release force, hence Iharu's erratic performance in combat. However, this comes with a trade-off, where whenever Flash adapters manage to stabilize their release force for long enough, they enter the zone, also known as flow state, and their release force becomes magnified to Captain Class and potentially even beyond Captain Class. This was a skill that Ogata developed to compete against Hikari Shinomiya, who was the top prodigy of her time. And as a side note, any chance Matsumoto gets to remind us that Hikari Shinomiya is just the GOAT and set apart from everyone else, he will do it. There's definitely more there than meets the eye. Did she really get killed by Kaiju number 6, or did someone set her up? I don't know. We gotta see what happens, but there's something there. I think this is a good development for a character like Iharu. Having a concept like being a Flash adapter is cool, even if it's not entirely unique in the world of manga. I think it helps to further differentiate these characters more in terms of what they can do. Now, if you thought I was just gonna gloss over the fact that they gave him a whole shotgun as a personal weapon, you'd be wrong. So, Iharu got himself a triple barrel shotgun with an ACOG attachment. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's different. A firearm we haven't seen yet. All right, I guess it could work. Then Matsumoto hits us with the Kaiju number 8 special, and we find out that there is a second feature this weapon has. So not only can Iharu raise his release force to 88%, putting him slightly above Captain Class, I think, but his shotgun is still super effective at mid-range, and he can fire buckshot into kaijus that generate enough electricity to rip their molecules apart from the inside. Once I saw him do all of that, I was like, yeah, that's a personal weapon. Iharu finally earned the right to be on the cover of Volume 7, because for the longest time, I didn't understand why he was there. Now, we all have to put respect on Iharu's name. All right, let's go. The chapter isn't even over yet. Haruichi and Aoi get some time to shine too. Out of all of the personal weapons, I was interested in Haruichi's the most, because I just didn't see how a bow could be very effective in this day and age, fighting not just regular kaiju, but Daikaiju created by Kaiju 9. Funny enough, Matsumoto knew readers would have those same thoughts, because even in the universe, the power of Haruichi's bow isn't evident. It comes off as weak, even to the operators. But a wise man who I currently cannot name, but I'm sure once said that power isn't everything. Poison has also destroyed plenty of empires, my friends. And on that note, it is time for us to be introduced to the manga's first showcase of a toxinizer personal weapon. Did I say that right? Toxinizer. Yeah. I've got to say that I'm getting some slight Captain Mayuri vibes from Haruichi after this stunt he just pulled. I absolutely agree that the personal weapon fits with his very laid back and chill personality. Not overly aggressive, not flashy, but it will do its job, and it will do its job well and stop you dead in your tracks. It's a glorified crowd control based weapon. If you play League of Legends, think Misfortune's Make It Rain ability that causes slow on the opponents. I have so many interesting one-to-one video game references these days. Anyway, I'm curious if he can mix up the toxins the weapon can utilize so that it can adapt to different situations. I think we'll be waiting a bit longer to see just how deadly this bow can actually be, because so far he uses it to stun Kaiju long enough for Aoi to land on top of its head and ram a giant pile bunker into its skull. And as I'm reading this, I was like, it's only a matter of time before Matsumoto gives us some kind of mecha-based suit, because pile bunker weapons are like a staple of mecha anime and games, right? Dang near every giant mobile suit has at least one pile bunker or laser sword in its arsenal. And as I turn the page, I just start laughing and shaking my head like, yep, Hasegawa is piloting his own mech suit. And I just assume it's not a personal weapon because I think I see another faceless troop piloting one right there beside him. I feel like mechs were definitely something that people in this world would definitely use to fight kaiju, just like in Pacific Rim. Well, maybe not like Pacific Rim because they had giant mechs, but more of the like mini mechs. It just fits so well with the world that Matsumoto has created. You love to see it. So, I like how this chapter ends with a clear goal for everyone to strive for. Narumi, using his third eye, deduces that all of the white Daikaiju are lacking a brain to operate on their own. They are seemingly connected to Kaiju 9 by way of radio signals. Narumi says that if they can get to Kaiju number 9 and take him out, the rest of the Daikaiju should stop as well. And if they do not make it to Commander Ashiro in time to stop her absorption, then Tokyo is basically cooked. The way this is so carefully worded makes me unsure about how this is going to go. On one hand, Kaiju 9 could be the big bad for the rest of the series, and if he is, he may very well gain control over all of Tokyo, but obviously just not the rest of Japan since the country is bigger than just Tokyo. That would still allow the Defense Force to regroup and recover in the other regions after the war. Or this could be it for him, and Matsumoto is just writing this as a way to remind us of the present stakes at hand. There is precedent for both routes, but I'd personally like to see what other villains Matsumoto can cook up would be like. It feels like next chapter we're gonna cut back to Kafka finally reaching Kaiju number 9. Whether or not he'll get there in time to save Mina remains to be seen. All we know is that fight is going to be astronomically exciting to witness. I've been waiting for a rematch between these two since December 2021, just after 9 absorbed Iseo. This fight has been a long time coming. It's essentially going to be Kaiju number 9 knowing all of Iseo's moves inside and out versus Kaiju number 8, who trained and studied Iseo's squadron style technique. No matter how powerful Kafka is, he's going to be heading into this battle as the challenger. And I love to watch an underdog win. I love it. Also, we can expect another trailer for the anime to drop sometime on the 29th of February, so don't forget to check that out as well. Hopefully we get word on whoever is performing the opening and ending on that day as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the hype is soon upon us. And that concludes all of my thoughts on the 2 chapters. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you like this kind of content, then click the thumbs up and consider subbing. Alright, I'll catch you guys on the next video. God bless. Peace.